What's up, Planeswalkers? It's your boy K-Dog. We're back in Standard. This time we're playing some Dimir Mill. We got tons of mill support in the new Zendikar Rising set, which is obviously one reason to showcase this kind of a build. But the other reason is we got lots of these interesting lands that can also be played, spells that can be played as lands. So it kind of gives you some interesting deck building ideas. And I felt like Dimir Mill was a very interesting way to kind of showcase how you can kind of build with those lands in mind. So the way these work is they're a spell in your hand. There we go. And you can choose to play them as a land instead from your hand. So if your opponent has like a duress or something like that, they can still take these cards because they're not actually a land until you're casting it, quote unquote casting it. But it does give you some nice deck building options. Obviously, the biggest thing, and the reason why these are kind of a game changer, is it's basically like flood protection. So if you top deck these in the late game, you're not stuck with just a land. You can actually play the spell side of it. Obviously, the one that I'm highlighting right here doesn't really fit into a late game top deck plan. Although there are certainly cards that are still relevant in the late game, like Mono Green likes to tap out for Primal Mites. And that sort of thing. And then, Ugin, oftentimes your opponent will tap out to try to cast an Ugin. So, Jwari Disruption is not necessarily a dead card in those matchups. You just have to kind of think about what your opponent is up to. And, so yeah, this is definitely a very thoughtful deck as far as how you sequence your lands, what kind of spells you want to hold up. We're not doing the Teferi's Tutelage draw a million cards and kind of turbo mill plan. We're playing a very controlling version here in this particular build. So the reason to go mill here is Maddening Cacophony. Just running 3 copies. I tried it with 4, but honestly I think 3 is kind of the sweet spot. It's a 2 mana sorcery speed to have your opponent mill 8 cards. However, you can kick it for additional 4, so 6 mana total. And your opponent mills half their library rounded up instead. So you don't necessarily want to cast this on turn 2. Like, we do have some cards that we care about your graveyard, so if that's what you have, then and you need to get that graveyard filled up so you can turn those cards online, then yeah, you might need to cast this on too. But generally you want to cast this for a kicker and actually mill up your kind of turbo mill your opponent that way, half their library, which could be 20-something cards typically. And so to get that party started as well, we have 4 copies here of Merfolk Secretkeeper. Milling 4 cards in one go is pretty sweet, and then having a 4 toughness blocker works great. Doesn't have any power, so it's a little bit awkward. Your opponent gets to swing into you, but if they have life-in creatures or whatever, you don't care about them getting life. You just need to kind of hold down the fort with the 4 toughness, which works decent enough in a lot of situations. We are milling our opponent, so they're going to have ways of profiting off of that. Earl, of course, notoriously being the most likely one. Obviously, in Wizards just announced a potential ban. It was pretty vague, though, but I think that's kind of how everyone's interpreting it. And, of course, Uro's been the one that we've all been expecting for basically months now. So this Cling to Dust may not be main deckable or even as playable. We'll kind of have to see how that shakes out with the ban announcement, or assuming there is a ban. So this is going to be recorded before then, and this is going to go live after the fact. So obviously we'll need to update the deck list here at some point, but for now you get the idea. There's easy enough to substitute something like this out. And either way, even the matchups where your opponent isn't profiting off it, you can still exile something to either gain life if they're running a bunch of creatures, or to draw cards if they are not. So still a pretty solid card anyway. So Jwari Disruption comes down as a blue source tapped, or you can have it hold it up as in-speed for a counter target spell unless the controller pays 1. So if your opponent taps out, then obviously not going to be able to pay 1, and you can just counter a spell. But having this option as a land as well just gives you so much flexibility. 3 copies here of Heartless Act. Seems like it's the premier removal now in black. Obviously there are the like Selesnya or Abzan counters decks, but even then, if you just remove counters, that can be okay enough to slow them down. But most often, Heartless Act is going to be removable against like 90% of the meta. Drown Loch is one of the cards that does care about cards in the graveyard because we can counterspell equal to or less than the number of cards in its controller's graveyard. And same thing with destroying a creature with the mana cost less than or equal to the number of cards in graveyard. I didn't say please wait for us to counterspell and mill 3 cards, so that's pretty fantastic. A couple Neutralize, same casting cost to counter a spell and it has Cycling as well. So just 4 copies of Didn't Say Please, and then just the 2 copies of Neutralize. We're also running 4 copies of Silundi Vision. Mostly it can be a land, and this is one of those cards where it does work fine in the late game because you can top deck this. You probably already have 6-7 lands. Your opponent goes to cast something, you can just fire off your Silundi Vision and dig for a Neutralize or Didn't Say Please, and you can try to counter it, or maybe find a Heartless Act or a Drown the Loch, and maybe that's irrelevant in that board state as well. So it just gives you some nice flexibility there. Digging 6 cards deep is actually pretty good. 4 copies here of Murderous Rider. So we are kind of a controlling instant speed draw go style deck. This is a fantastic option to deal with creatures and planeswalkers, of course. And then it can come down to gain us some life in those kind of aggro matches by having a 2/3 life linking blocker. 4 copies here of Pelakka Predation. Again, not really super impressed by the sorcery speed side of this card, but just the fact that it can be land or this spell is pretty reasonable. And we're trying to really maximize the number of cards like this. So it comes down as a black source tapped, of course. And then you can pay the sorcery side at 3 mana to have your opponent refold a hand. You get to choose a card, any card with mana cost 3 or greater, and make them discard of that card. So there's plenty of relevant targets for this as well, so it's not like a terrible card. So just 1-for-1 removal or a counterspell, proactive counterspell, you can think of it as. E2 Extinction gives us some exile removal, instant speed, it's pretty fantastic, creatures, planeswalkers. Hagra Mauling is a tap land, of course, but it's also instant speed removal on a creature. So generally it's going to cost 4 mana unless your opponent happens to be running no basics, which isn't going to happen too often, but either way, the fact this can be a land or a kill spell makes it worth running. Just the 2 copies here of Ashiok. We're really just more on kind of just milling and controlling out your opponent, but Ashiok kind of gives you an alternate win condition here as well, and even the 2/3 creatures that can kind of help mill your opponent as well, since they effectively exile by attacking or blocking, because they eventually mill by attacking or blocking because you exile the top 2 cards of their library. And you can -3 to bounce something back to your hand, your opponent's hand. If they don't have any cards in hand, they have to exile it. Either way, they have to exile something from their hand, so it's kind of pseudo removal. And then 4 copies here of Into the Story. Since we are doing so much milling, we're going to be casting this for 4 mana pretty much all the time, and be able to draw cards for 4 mana instant speed is fantastic. So mana base here are just 10 natural lands, since we do have all those spell lands. So our curve is actually pretty low here as well. We have the 2 Ashioks here at 5 mana. Into the Story is obviously more of a 4-drop. So our curve basically tops out at 4 with 2 5-drops. So we don't really we're not super hungry as a lot of control decks can be. So running 10 natural lands has actually felt pretty good, especially even with all these spell lands. So just 1 basic island, 1 basic swamp, just gives us a little bit of protection, like Field of Ruin type shenanigans. The pathways are pretty fantastic, and then the Temple of Deceit, of course, are great. Sideboard plan here, we got 1 more Cling to Dust for those Uro and other kind of graveyard heavy matchups. 2 Anticognitions for countering creatures or planeswalkers. The control can pay 2. However, if they have 8 or more cards in their graveyard, it's just a hard counter, and we also get to scry 2. So pretty fantastic for us. Just a couple of copies here of Negate for those control matchups. 2 Eliminates, giving us some way around the counter decks. Being able to kill creatures or planeswalkers, Bazookas and things like that. A couple Feed the Swarms give us some interaction for enchantments here as well. We do lose life equal to the CMC, but that's fine. 1 Midnight Clock for the mirror matchup, as it will shuffle our library back into our graveyard back into our library. A couple Soul Shatters to get around like Hexproof, Indestructible, Can't Be Countered. There's that one new card in green, the Cragplate Baloth or whatever it's called. So this is kind of like our only way to answer that. And there's also like the Winota deck, they run like the Selfless Savior and stuff like that. Or Seasoned Hallowblade, obviously those kind of cards. We can just make them sacrifice it, so it gets around any hexproof indestructible effects. A couple Sublime Epiphanies work great against the control decks here as well. Pretty modal with all these abilities. We don't have obviously a ton of creatures to copy, but we do have the Murderous Riders and things like that, which could be helpful to adding to the board to maybe pressure our opponent's planeswalkers or whatever the case may be. And then we're going to try out 1 copy of Magic Mirror. Not entirely sure this belongs to definitely a flex spot. But, if we're in kind of a mirror type matchup, obviously you're going to have tons of stuff in your graveyard, so the Magic Mirror can be pretty cheap, maybe even just 3 blue mana. And then we're going to be using it for card advantage as the game kind of goes along, since a lot of those matchups will be pretty long, and they probably don't have good ways to deal with artifacts. So we're just going to bring 1 copy of those Midnight Clock and Magic Mirror in for those kind of mirror matchups. All right, that's the deck. We're jumping into some matches. All right, up against El Bonzo. It's okay. We have a couple lands with this Disruption in hand, so we'll try it against Orion. Temple, try to scry. That is a land, I guess. Let's see what they got. Abzan. Nice thing about not running a whole lot of permanents and playing this sort of a Drago style of a mill is we don't have lots of things for our opponent to target with their removal. Just the 2 Ashioks, which aren't even super key to our game. Birth of Melitis. Silundi Vision means we can leave our Disruption open, so we'll do that. Like they have some ways to interact with their graveyard, so this Cling to Dust could be decent. Skyclave Cleric. I mean, it's a land or a creature, so why not? Let's get rid of the Elspeth Conquers Death just to draw a card, I guess. Drawing Loch is okay. Have a 0/4 blocker down. Still have Neutralize, Drown the Loch, Disruption. Lots of options. Obviously, the longer this game goes, more we'll want to get this Disruption just down on the field. That's a land. Doom Foretold. I don't think so. Super annoying card. Glad to not have to deal with that. Pass the turn. Just wait and kick this Cacophony. Obviously, they're running a Orion deck, so we get maximum value. Archon is pretty nasty as well. Let's see, they have 5 cards. And we'll drown Loch, I guess. So up against a mid-range this, probably want to be more in on bringing counter magic in, not so much on removal, but we'll see. Alright, they do have the Orion, which they could go for, but they're not get a ton of value off of it. Gargaroth. Do have Heartless Act. Black mana open. Don't think they can really do anything, so we'll go ahead and let them resolve that. Save these neutralizes. I guess they could have the Malakir Rebirth. They do not. It's my kind of a weird addition for their list if they are. We'll just hold open this counter magic here until we get to 6 lands and then fire off this Cacophony. Elspeth doesn't even do anything, but it'll make our creatures... it'll make our counter spells cost more, and they'll get back a creature here in a couple turns, so we'll definitely want to get rid of that. Alright, we're still stuck on 4 lands, but we do have these counter magics. Like they are curving out just fine. Try another Elspeth. We'll say no again. So we're slowly getting there. So 54 cards in library. Alright, we do have some card draw here as well. We don't have a removal spell, so we'll need to counter that. We'll also let it resolve just to draw a card into the story and hopefully find a removal spell, but then that puts us in a weird spot. I mean, they're getting pretty low on cards in hand, so we're doing okay. Eventually we'll run out of counters and we'll need to fire these off just to refill. Okay, bring in Jwari into the hand, sure. Finally get a reprieve from countering everything. Hopefully into the story can find us some more lands and counter spells. Probably want the Hagra Mauling as a card draw. Predation. I do want Drown the Loch. We'll have to discard here. So unfortunately having so many being stuck on lands. What do we discard? We have to cycle. The Predation isn't really doing us a whole lot of good here. I think just the flexibility of Temple of Deceit is worth it. Obviously don't like Planeswalkers, so we will neutralize that. Don't think we want Secretkeeper in this spot. Alright, so we got 2 Drown Locks for some counter magic, or we can just draw off into the story if they don't do anything else. Don't imagine they have much in the way of instant speed interaction. Let's go ahead and exile Nissa. Draw a card. Into the story, but we have a pretty full hand at this point, so I don't need to fire off that, and we can just cling to dust. Don't think we're in a position to Pelakka. We do have counter magic as well, but if they try to fire off multiple spells, which kind of seems like they're trying to set up for, I'd rather just have as much mana down as possible. We can hold off on the Cacophony, I think. Let's try to build our resources as much as possible, so we can have counter magic backup for anything they try to do. Don't really care about Omen. I'm not worried about life total at all, and a couple 1/1s aren't really going to make too much of a difference. We can go wide and start swinging in for 2, sort of pressure our life total. But we'll just counter this Orion. Since they're dirtily mid-range list, there's not really a whole lot they can do. Obviously, post sideboard, they'll probably have some hand hate and whatnot. Go ahead and exile the Orion. Well, yeah, we'll gain some life. I'd like to find some more lands here so we can actually fire off multiple things. Cling to dust. I think we actually play this as a land so we have more options next turn. We have removal in hand and we're not really under too much pressure right now. I'd like to tap out for a Cacophony and then still have a Drown the Loch open would be nice. If they do have any other graveyard interaction, we do have a Cling to Dust in hand now. I'm not worried about these tokens one bit. A lot has to go wrong for us to lose to these tokens. Orion. We'll counter that. Let's go and fire this off. Just try to get as many lands as possible. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we'll fire this off. Try to clear out these creatures in case they do have some more graveyard interaction. Our graveyard's pretty full as well. Fire this off with Kicker. So we do have some interaction here, at least no counter magic. So they will get to resolve something, but we can kill it. Even if it's a Urian, it's not really doing a whole lot, just gaining life, making more tokens. Okay, they're going to make us sacrifice our Secretkeeper. Nissa, sure. So we're starting to pressure our life total a little bit. Right, we'll make them sacrifice their Nissa. They get a 3/3 with Menace. We'll lose our Secretkeeper, but we'll kill their... Well, they have an Omen here as well. Disruption. It's possible we get them to tap out, but not likely. I don't have any enchantment interaction right now, so I think I'm fine with just firing this off. Gives us a creature now. If we play Use, we have the Extinction available to us, or Cling to Dust. Just sacrifice your Omen. See if they have a permanent they can resolve. Extinction event. Can get rid of our Murderous Rider. Okay. Keep their tokens, but then they have to get rid of Doom Foretold. Well, no, they have a Treacherous Blessing, because of course they do. Why wouldn't they have a Treacherous Blessing? Let's draw a card. Murderous Rider. Don't think that's going to be making a difference at this point. Let's see what we got here. Another removal spell. We have 2 in hand, so I don't think we're worried about that. Let me see if we fire this off with Kicker. And we play this as is. Exactly. Whew, that was a rough matchup. Oh boy. So obviously permanents aren't going to be great against them. They have lots of removal. They have the Doom Fortolds. So definitely want Sublime Epiphany. Definitely want Negate, Anticognition, since they're pretty slow. Just trying to counter their creatures before they even get down. Definitely would be interesting sideboarding decisions here. Because you still kind of want a lot of what we already have, so... Not entirely sure what... Alright, against Fathomless. 1 land. Well, there's 3. We'll keep, and Into the Story is a ways away, so we'll have to drop that off. Alright, lead with Temple, try to scry into... I mean, it is a land, so we'll keep it. Alright, nothing doing for our opponent, so we'll hold open the Disruption here. If they try to tap out, we can counter it. Tabarax. It's probably worth countering. Silundi Vision. Guess we'll play that, because we're not casting it anytime soon. Okay, not much we can do about that. You have a 1-mana cleric? Nope. Another land, and that's it. Didn't say please is nice. So we'll go ahead and play you out. Might not have a lot of big 3-mana spells, so we'll not sure about holding this up. It's pretty medium in general. It's kind of annoying. But I don't think it's where we need to be countering necessarily. They don't do anything else. Alright, well, we'll go ahead and kill it then. Hoping to didn't say please. Okay. Doesn't appear they have any relevant spells for us to target with that. So they have 3 cards in their graveyard now, so any 3-drop we can counter with the Drown the Loch. Those we have didn't say please. So the Speaker's pretty annoying because they're going to get up to enough life where they can start tapping it to make 4/4s, so we need to deal with that at some point. They have to have 7 more life than your starting life total. Don't want to fire this Clean the Dust just yet. We'll fire off Ashiok since they're just being super conservative over there. Instead of removal for Ashiok, we'll at least slow their tempo down, their life gain, and get rid of a card. Shatter the Sky. I always think it's hilarious when these like decks, like you're running like all creatures, but you also want to run Shatter the Sky, like especially in your maybe out of the sideboard. Especially these days with like Scoot Swarm and whatnot, but just as is, it just seems kind of cheesy. Alright, we've got the graveyard filled up now with 4 cards. Disruption. I don't think we're going to get them to tap out, so we're going to play this out. Right, so we need to keep an eye on their life total to potentially kill off this Speaker before it does nasty things with making angels. We've seen they've had village rights and things like that. They're going to kick their Null Priest. Well, in that case, we'll didn't say please it. So then you get to swing 1, gain 1. Alright, so we found plenty of lands. Into the Story would be pretty nice right about now. Veto's pretty annoying. Last card in hand. Let's fire up Drown in the Loch, I guess. If they want to Village Rights it, that's the same thing. We have to draw some cards at least. And nothing else on their S up. We will Murderous Rider their I want to get that Cleric. It's going to give him more value. The Speaker. Actually, we have just enough to do both. Cool. Alright, we have exact mana and cards in the bin to deal with that. Let's fire off this Murderous Rider. Get rid of that. I'd rather fire off Into the Story. Pretty good draw for them. There we go, found some kill spells. Is there anything they would tap out for in Orzhov Clerics? I doubt it. Run fire this off. Played this out. Think we destroy that? Get back into their clerics, Tabaraks. Do we care about Tabaraks? 2/2. Well, we'll hold off. Let's get our creatures online. Obviously, we don't have a way to block it because it has flying. Pelakka Predation can potentially get something in their hand, like a removal spell, but them just attacking for 2 doesn't really hurt us too crazy here. I guess we'll just play it out. I don't really picture them holding stuff up in their hand. We'll swing 2, try to gain some life. They take the block. 23 life, but they want that. They want that block. I mean, they can attack in through our Secretkeeper, so that's fine. So they got us on a clock here. We're not going about Tabaraks just yet. We're at 16. Give the keeper back just in case, I guess. So we can basically trade 2 for 2 with the Rider gaining 2 life and Tabaraks. Angel of Destiny is pretty nasty, so we will neutralize that. Leave John the Loch open as a counter or kill spell. Good game. Okay. Definitely wasn't over. Alright, so they have the Call of the Death Dweller. But I think we can just kind of counter what they're doing, then we should be good. Soul Shatter isn't too impressive here. Eliminate is nice. Ashiok is okay. Did we see any enchantments besides Bastion? They don't seem to be running Banishing Light or anything like that. Seem to be running Blood Chief's Thirst. Probably have Heartless Dire Tactics. Alright, so yeah, I don't think Ashiok is super impressive in this matchup. Maybe Cling the Dust just to neutralize the Caller. But Negate seems pretty solid against that as well. Both negates. I mean, we have neutralized. John Loch didn't say please, so that's probably pretty reasonable. Exile removal feels pretty good. Just trying to counter their creatures before they even come online. And just all the cheap interaction we can get. Maybe feed the swarm. Most of the creatures are pretty small on casting cost, and then just the one of Negate. Since they don't have too many non-creature spells, but they could have some something we don't want to them to resolve. Okay. I guess people don't like playing against Mill. I don't blame them. So, like I said, to try this in the unranked and kind of had some more similar results, and people didn't want to necessarily play against you, so I decided to take it into ranked. First couple matches got wrecked by Mono Green, so I didn't showcase those because we didn't really do too much. Obviously, Mono Green is one of the top few decks in all of Standard, so I'm not super. I won't say this deck is super competitive, obviously, but it's semi-competitive, so it depends on your matchups and kind of what rank you're at. You're gonna have better results. From the intro, I did bring in one Soul Shatter because I was getting a lot of those matchups. I don't know if it's just because the algorithm just doing its thing or what it is. Obviously, Mono Green is a strong deck, so you can definitely expect to come across that. So either way, Soul Shatter does kind of do the same thing as Murderous Rider pretty much anyways. since you're probably going to be targeting their biggest creature or planeswalker. Obviously, Rider gives you the flexibility to target, but Soul Shatter base is the same thing, especially with mono green and Garruk's Harbingers and things like that being very prevalent in the meta right now. Just go ahead and make that change here to get one Soul Shatter in the main, because it's not always relevant, but obviously against mono green it can be pretty impactful, especially being instant speed. It still works pretty well. But overall, I mean, Mill has a lot of good support here, and I do like all these kind of spell lands like Silundi Vision, Jwari Disruption. It's pretty fun kind of figuring out when to play this as a land and when to hold it up as a counter spell. And yeah, we're just going more for the kind of a Drago traditional counter spell type of a deck here. I'm not doing the Rune Crab or whatever it is, landfall thing. Like if you're doing that, you kind of need more than like either Simic or Sultai. And you know, you can do Teferi's Tutelage, but other people are already kind of doing that. So I just went with more traditional as a way to kind of exploit these lands that you can play as spells, but can also be you know, lands in the early turns as well. And yeah, I mean, even 10 lands here, 10 natural lands, we still didn't really have issues with our mana base for the most part. So that feels pretty strong. I definitely like having that option. Definitely opens up a world of deck building options. So hopefully we can continue to see these, as long as they don't, you know, make them, you know, overpowered, you know, like Oko, Uro, that kind of crap. Should be pretty fine. Like all these, how they come into play tapped, it definitely can be a tempo play that can kind of slow you down and hurt you. Yeah, you also have the mythic ones that you can pay 3 life to have them come in untapped as a land, which is pretty nice, but then they're pretty overcosted for what they do on the other side. I mean, they're good spells still, and just good cards in general. But yeah, I feel pretty solid about this list overall. You know, we have just enough kill spells, but mostly kind of leaning into our counter magic to kind of prevent our opponent from doing too much. Obviously, aggro decks can kind of get under us a little bit, so maybe making room for like some more kind of sweepers. Maybe instead of like eliminate, just like a Pestilent Haze or Extinction event, something like that maybe. But obviously we still need tools to deal with other control decks, since you know, with obviously rotation and Teferi and things like that the last few weeks. Kind of the Drago control deck is still kind of on the menu, although kind of the aggro and combo decks are still kind of the cream of the crop, it seems like. But obviously other people are playing Mill, so that's why we got the Midnight Clock and the Magic Mirror in here. Haven't really had any mirror matchups yet, so I can't really speak to how good these are, but definitely looks like they could be some pretty solid value in those matchups. Sublime Epiphany, obviously pretty expensive for what it does, but obviously just a powerful spell all around, be able to counterspell and draw you a card at the same time, especially if whatever they're trying to cast triggers something, you can counter that at the same time. We don't have too many creatures to actually make copies of. We just have the Murderous Rider and the Merfolk Secretkeeper, but that's not the worst thing to copy that. We do have Ashiok here as well, so you can potentially copy a Ashiok token, which I have done before. This feels pretty nice. But yeah, overall, list feels pretty solid. You know, some little tweaking you can do to it to, you know, still trying to figure out the meta, so I'm not really 100% sure on what exactly the proper list is, but just from tuning, it is kind of where I'm at right now. But like I said, you know, there's maybe some room to obviously improve for go wide strategies, but mostly just trying to kill things like Scoop Swarms and things like that before your opponent even has a chance to, and just play lots of targeted removal. But mono green is going to be a pretty rough matchup, you know, with they have Hexproof from black with the Garruk's Harbinger. Quest and Beast is just such a powerful card and things like that. It's going to be a rough matchup either way, but you know, we do have the Anticognition and things like that in the sideboard to kind of help out somewhat. But yeah, overall, you know, it's pretty semi-competitive, I would say. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and until next time, make sure you jank with purpose.